What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from Mtg. We like magic, and today we're looking at the first budget deck tech of the season. Let's check out Dimir Turbo-Surveil. Hey, Ziggy showed up, you guys. Now we can have ourselves a real party, you know? But anyway, first thing this deck taught me is that building a budget Surveil deck in this format actually not as easy as you might think it is, you know? Wizards gave us like almost 30 decent budget-oriented cards with this mechanic on them, so you take this deck in a few different directions. There's kind of a control-y, mid-rangey Surveil build that wins off of like Dream Eater, and it plays Sinister Sabotage and stuff. I think that's a cool looking deck, but if we want to drive down the budget as much as possible and have as much fun as we can at the same time, then there's a couple of different cards specifically that make this deck worth building. The first of which is definitely Thoughtbound Phantasm. We can get this thing attacking on turn 3, 4-5 damage in this deck. And it's not even that hard, you know? Just play Thoughtbound on turn 1, Surveil on your second turn, Surveil twice on your third turn, and bing bong, kid, you got yourself a 5-5 that can attack on turn 3. Pretty dope. But even if you don't get it big quick, or you just need a blocker in the early game, really good for that, you know? This thing can become a 3-3 as early as turn 2, and especially if you're on the play, that's going to brick wall most of what aggro is trying to do to you. And don't forget that it just keeps growing. You know, we've got like 22 different cards that Surveil in this deck. So even after it gets to 5-5, it'll easily get to 6-6, 7-7, 8-8, all that. So as long as this stays out on the battlefield, it gets more and more dangerous until your opponent absolutely has to do something about it, or it wins the game. But a good companion to Phantasm, and another card you could say kind of all the same things about, is Damir's Spybug. This, too, is only like a quarter right now, and it's actually a really, really good Surveil payoff, you know? It's not going to be swinging in, you know, for as much damage as early as a card like Phantasm, but unlike Phantasm, it's nearly impossible to profitably block this thing, especially relatively early in the game. So even if it's only swinging for 2 or 3 damage on turn 3, it's almost guaranteed to go unblocked in that situation. And just like Phantasm, this doesn't ever stop getting bigger, you know what I mean? Like, it's not uncommon, if you can keep this out for a number of turns, to have a 5-5 or a 6-6 Spybug. Like, a couple of times in testing, I had Spybugs that could take out Doom Whisperers, you know? If your opponent can't immediately remove this, it's going to get huge relatively fast, considering after we play it, we're going to be doing almost nothing but surveilling for the next few turns. But there's actually a couple of other creatures in the deck because I don't just want to play 8 creatures and call it a day. So we're going to play 2 copies of Blood Operative, which is not as aggressive as the other creatures I've shown you so far, but still a fine creature whether you're on offense or defense. Now on defense, this blocks and trades pretty well, gains you a little bit of life back, extends the game so that Damir Spybug can get another attack step or 2 in. So this holds down the ground for you really, really well. But on offense, it's fine too, you know, against control decks that don't play too many creatures. This swings in for 3 lifelink at a time, and if they can deal with it, you have no problem getting it back. Again, over a third of this deck is Surveil, so if they ever kill it and don't exile it, you'll be getting it back like the next turn, almost every time. But I'm also making room for 2 copies of Night Veil Sprite. Doesn't look incredible, but there's all kinds of edge reasons why I'm playing this card. For one, this is a body that both attacks and blocks in the air. Both of those things are really important. You know, this adds damage to your Spybug attacks and stuff like that, helps increase our air force. Oh, that's good, but blocking in the air is fine too, you know? And a Stormcrow that effectively lets us surveil every turn as long as it survives is really good in this deck, because when this attacks alongside Spybug, obviously Spybug gets a counter. Attacks alongside Thoughtbound, obviously Thoughtbound gets a counter. So having a surveil piece that surveils more or less every turn as long as your opponent can't remove it is fantastic in this deck, because you won't always draw a card that surveils every single turn. So on those cards, those turns where you're dead and you draw a land, Sprite gives you a way to both attack for damage, more damage than just its usual power toughness if you've got a Spybug or a Phantasm out, and still get a surveil. So all of that is just really, really good. I think that Sprite is not necessarily a 4-of or anything, but it's just good enough to get a 2-of because we want surveil on a body. Now, I am playing another creature in this deck, but I'm kind of counting it as a spell, and that's the 3 copies of Barrier of Bones, which was a 4-of for a good long time, but I really don't think you need all 4 copies of this card. Mostly what it does is it surveils for a mana, and yeah, it holds down the ground for you a little bit, which can be really, really relevant sometimes. It's just a blocking creature against aggro to extend the game. We do want that, but we also want a 1-mana surveil, and we want it really, really bad. Enough to play Barrier of Bones, at least. You know, we only have a couple of options for 1-mana Surveil cards in this format, but we really, really want them so that we can get Phantasm attacking as quickly as possible, and Barrier helps with that. Now, the other 1-mana Surveiler that we're playing, it looks a little bit more narrow, and it definitely is objectively more situational, but it's been really, really impressive, and that's Dazzling Lights. Does not look like much. Completely understand that. This looks like one of the worst Surveil cards in the set, but it's a Surveil 2, and Surveil 2 is actually really good. We don't have a whole lot of that in this deck, so I just want to point that out. 1-mana Surveil 2 is sometimes good enough. And this will also help Thoughtbound get attacking as early as possible. Makes Dimir Spybug really good too, you know. But it works best for its intended purpose, you know, as a combat trick. This is unfreaking believable when you're swinging in with a Phantasm or a Spybug, you know, especially with Spybug, because there are some decks in this format that play a bunch of flyers. You know, the Red White Angels deck, which I want to cover really soon, just so you know, has, you know, Resplendent Angel, Shalai, Aurelia, Lyra Dawnbringer, just all the flyers in the world. So they can block Spybug, and they will block Spybug, but Dazzling Lights turns that into a potential blowout exchange for just 1 mana. Not only does your Spybug get a counter, but you get to, you know, put Shalai's power down to 0, or Resplendent Angel's power down to 0, or Aurelia's power down to 0. It's just unbelievable in those combat exchanges, and other combat exchanges for that matter. You know, just the fact that even when your opponent swings in, you know, when you're on defense, then this can put a counter on Spybug or Phantasm and neuter completely one of their best creatures, which just makes this an unbelievable combat trick for just 1 mana in this deck. But we're also going to play 3 main deck copies of Thought Erasure here. I only want the 3 main deck copies because sometimes the card is actually pretty bad, especially if you're on the draw. But when you're on the play against certain decks like Control or mid-range oriented decks, this card is unbelievable, you know. Against Control, this is going to get removal and sweepers out of their hand to make sure that your Spybugs and Phantasms are a little bit safer. And then against mid-range decks and such, this is going to get giant answers that completely outclass us out of their hand, you know. Big creatures and the like, you know, big flyers and whatnot that'll, you know, block our Spybugs. We don't want that to happen. So Thought Erasure is just a great early game way to not only see what the rest of their game plan is going to be for the rest of the game, but also get those problem cards out of their hand that'll interfere with our Spybugs. But we're playing all 4 copies of Notion Rain in the deck, baby. This thing is really good, and we'll definitely see a lot of competitive standard play outside of just this silly budget deck. But this is the first time I've gotten to cover it this season in a deck tech. You know, this will help us get our 4th and 5th lands, which are actually really, really important for this deck. But it'll also not only surveil, make our Spybugs and Phantasms bigger, but draw us into more surveil cards, which is really, really important. We need a card advantage piece like this to help keep things going, get a refill in the late game, and help make sure that our creatures get even bigger. So Notion Rain does all of that stuff. We'll play it. But we are playing a little bit of a removal suite in this deck. We need that. So I'm going to run these 3 cards by you at the same time here. We're going to play 2 copies of Unexplained Disappearance, 3 copies of Price of Fame, and 2 copies of Discovery Dispersal. Now, for a long while, I was playing 4 copies of Discovery Dispersal, but I wanted Blood Operative in the main deck really, really bad, so I cut 2 copies of Discovery Dispersal to fit Blood Operative in. But I still think the right call might be 4 copies of Discovery Dispersal. It's a ridiculous card. Dis and Dis, both halves, are great. You know, the first half gives you a Preordain for 1 more mana, which you can also cast with just black mana if that's all you got. That is sometimes relevant. But Dispersal is a great removal option, especially against certain cards we have problems dealing with otherwise. You know, things like Carnage Tyrant and Vine Mare. If they do hit the table, Dispersal is a possible answer for them. And even if it's not targeting a creature like that, it's still getting technically the best creature, usually, off the other side of the table, and that's good enough. Obviously, Unexplained Disappearance is more of a tempo piece. It's bounce, but that will matter a great deal for a couple of reasons. You know, you can use this as a combat trick as well, no matter who's swinging in. You're swinging in, your opponent's swinging in, doesn't matter. Just return their best creature or the 1 creature that could block, you know, the 2 creatures that could block Spybug, you know, return 1 of them to their hand. And it gets your Spybug through, it gets a counter on your Spybug, gets their best creature off the battlefield. So in that way, when you need a little bit of tempo, Unexplained Disappearance is a great way to not only get us something off the board, but surveil very cheaply as well. But Price of Fame is straight up removal, and it's really, really good. I don't want to always pay 4 mana for a removal spell, but at the very least, it's instant speed, takes out any creature that doesn't have Indestructible or Hexproof. Pretty dope deal right there. And if you are targeting a Lyra or an Aurelia or whatever with it, then suddenly it only costs 2 mana and is the best card in the entire deck. So at least 3 copies of this. And by the way, you can use this as a pretty decent combat trick too. You know, they swing in with everything. Price of Fame their legend, put a counter on your Spybug and your Phantasm and get to blocking. That can be a blowout sometimes too. But there are a couple of more cards in the deck, and you might be able to guess what they are. Now, I am being bold, going all the way and playing playsets of both Narcomoeba and Creeping Chill in this deck. Yeah, we're doing it. This is Turbo-Surveil. We've got more than 20 cards that Surveil in the deck. It should not at all be hard, and is not hard, in fact, to get either of these for free. And as you know, free spells, even if they're not that great of spells, are some of the best things you can be doing in Magic. You know, getting a free 1/1 doesn't seem great, but hey, it's got flying, and usually it's stapled onto, you know, Surveil 2, Draw 2. Like you play Notion Rain, and you get a free Narcomoeba. Or sometimes you'll Dazzling Light something during their, you know, combat step when they attack in. You'll Surveil 2, get a free Narcomoeba, and there you have another blocker. That's not bad at all. Plus, since it flies, it does add on to the damage we're doing in the air. You know, this plus Dimir Spybug, plus Night Veil Sprite. Sometimes it'll lead to just that few extra damage in a game that you need to put things away. And if nothing else, I have done this a couple of times, weird tech here, you can target an Narcomoeba with a Dazzling Lights and put counters on your Phantasms and Spybugs. I've done that more than once, actually, so that's another reason to play the card. But Creeping Chill is actually the much better card in this format, you know. Narcomoeba's always been a decent card in older formats, but Creeping Chill is actually decent in Standard as a form of reach and as a way to gain a little bit of life back against aggro decks when you absolutely need to. People are talking about Creeping Chill for Modern Dredge. LSV actually thinks it's a really good card for Modern Dredge, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it popping up there, and that's why it's like 25-30 cents instead of the 5 cents it should probably be, but it's still worth paying if we're going to be playing this deck, you know. Even if it gets stuck in your hand, it's actually not as bad as it might seem. Yeah, it doesn't affect the board or anything, but there are going to be plenty of times where you're going to need just a little bit of extra reach, and you're willing to pay 4 mana for that last 3 damage, or maybe you get 2 Creeping Chills in your hand for whatever reason. You're willing to pay 4 mana in 2 installments, 8 mana in 2 installments really, for that 6 damage that you need to actually finish things off. Now here's the mana base, and this is the most expensive part of the deck, obviously. You know, Watery Graves, like $9 a piece, Drowned Catacombs, like $5.50, $6 a piece. So I'm sorry about this mana base. If the mana base didn't exist, this deck would only cost like $15 or $20. So do remember, if you're more budget-oriented or you don't have all your dual lands yet, you can supplement this with Dimir Guild Gates or just Islands and Swamps if you absolutely want to. You will take a hit in the consistency department, but it's worth it if you don't have $75 to spend and you'd rather spend 20. Now here's our sideboard, and a lot of this is actually really self-explanatory. Whispering Snitch, not quite, I think, good enough for the main deck. It could be, but I, again, wanted as many cards that surveilled as possible. And when you add cards like Blood Operative, Thoughtbound Phantasm, Dimir Spybug, Whispering Snitch, Narcomoeba, Creeping Chill, then you're down to like, you know, 14 or 16 surveillors, and that's just not quite enough. So I'll put this in against aggro to both extend the game and help win races against them. As far as Disinformation Campaign, though, this will win the game against control. Not every single time or anything, but it's just an unbelievably busted piece against, you know, slower control-y decks. Not only will it make them discard a card, but it lets us draw a card, so it's just pure unbelievable card advantage. It's a 2-for-1 on a stick that we can repeat multiple times in a game really, really easily. So Disinfo Campaign is definitely a 4-of sideboard card against control matchups because it makes it way more winnable. As far as Thought Erasure, this will come in when we're on the play in games 2 or 3 against almost anything really, but especially control decks that play a lot of removal and sweepers. We want to get those out of their hand as reliably as possible. So we want that 4th copy of Erasure. Another copy of Blood Operative will also come in against control decks. This just bugs them so much, and there's really not a whole lot they can do about it outside of Vraska's Contempt and Settle the Wreckage. And like Conclave Tribunal, there's a few ways, you know, Ixalan's Binding to, again, to exile stuff in this format, but for the most part, we're still seeing stuff like Justice Strike, Lightning Strike, Shock, blah, blah, so turns out the Blood Operative is actually a really good card against these control decks and any deck that's looking to abuse its graveyard, which there are a few of. Plus the 3 copies of Sinister Sabotage to finish it off. You know, I'll play this instead of Negate, even though it does cost another mana to play, which is a big deal. I still like it because not only can we counter that Settle the Wreckage our opponent wants to play, but we can also make our Phantasms and Spybugs bigger at the same time. That's worth it. Now, before we get to the power rankings, there were a few things I didn't play, and a couple of obvious upgrade possibilities that I want to talk about real quick. So the first thing I want to get to is the stuff I didn't play, and I want to bring up a few cards specifically here. We'll start with Damir Informant. I actually didn't get to try this card out in testing, but I do think it's possibly really, really good. This holds down the ground really well. 4 toughness is an awful lot against the majority of aggro decks in the format. Plus, the free Surveil too when it ETBs is really good. Not only because of Phantasm and Spybug and stuff, but just because that is really good into the battlefield value. You know, even if your opponent does manage to kill it, you've still got a Surveil 2 off of it, and they've kind of wasted a removal spell. And for that matter, I think Whisper Agent might be a pretty playable card too, you know? This trades a lot more easily than Dimir Informant. Plus, it's got Flash, so it's kind of a combat trick that makes our, Phantasms bigger, it makes our Spybugs bigger, lets us Surveil. That's just good in general as far as ETB value goes too. So I actually think Whisper Agent might be a sweet card for this deck, but I did not try it out. I went with more spell-based Surveil stuff. Also want to touch on Enhanced Surveillance, just don't play it. It's not as good as you think. It's a do-nothing enchantment for the most part. Yeah, you're surveilling an awful lot in this deck, and this will help you get to, Narcomoebas and Creeping Chills a little bit easier, but you really don't want yet another card that doesn't surveil, and in fact doesn't do really anything. The turn it enters the battlefield most of the time, so I didn't actually try out Enhanced Surveillance. I think it's probably bad for this deck, especially with so many cards already that we would rather play that don't surveil. I think this is like 5th on my list. As far as upgrades, I think these are all fairly obvious. We could play Lazav in the deck, which could copy Spybugs and Thoughtbound Phantasms after they die. You'd have to start over with the +1/+1 counters, but whatever, that's fine. And there is a cool thing where you could, technically, this is theoretically possible, you could turn Lazav into, say, a Thoughtbound Phantasm for a mana, surveil a couple of times to put counters on it, and then you turn it into a Blood Operative. Suddenly, you've got, a 3/1 with a few +1/+1 counters on it that has lifelink, and that could be really, really good. So Lazav, just because she surveils when she enters the battlefield, might make it into this deck. But I say might, definitely makes it into the deck, along with Doom Whisperer, who is obviously the big thing you want to play at the top of the curve, but it's also $20 a piece. Not counting the dual lands in the deck, a single copy of Doom Whisperer would cost more than the entire deck put together. So if you've got the money or you've opened up a couple of copies, Doom Whisperer definitely goes in. But here are our power rankings right here. Final score of 58. Not bad. For a pretty strictly budget deck. Again, without the lands here, it's like 15 or 20 bucks to build this deck. And you could just do Dimir Guildgates or something. Take this up to F&M and see how much fun you can have, because it is a lot of fun. But you do want the consistency. You want untapped lands as often as possible. So if you've got those lands or you got the Skrill, this is the best way you can build this deck. Well, I won't say the best. Again, you want Lazav and Doom Whisperer and stuff. But as far as budget goes, aside from lands, it's not actually a bad deck. It's kind of a tempo, kind of a mid-range deck. We need to extend the game long enough for our big creatures to get as big as we need them to get to finish the game off. But we've got some decent removal, some good tempo options, some really, really good spells, some decent card advantage in here. So I like a lot about what this deck is doing, and I was able to pick up more than a few wins on Arena with this thing. It's really not hard to build an Arena. There are very, very few rares in this deck, if you didn't notice. And hey, you're probably already spending, if you're a smart person, you're probably already spending your rare wildcards in Arena on dual lands. Those are probably the first thing you should spend your rare wildcards on, pro tip. So just letting you know, if you've already done that, you've got your Watery Graves and stuff, this is actually a really good deck to build on Arena right now. It beats more than you might think it beats. And that's because smart play goes a long way. If you're playing against something with lots of removal or sweepers and whatnot, make sure you prioritize Thought Erasure. Most often you'll play it before you even play a Phantasm or a Spybug to protect them as much as possible and get that good stuff out of their hand. Now, if you're playing against a deck with a lot of creatures, get as much use out of your combat tricks as you possibly can, because cards like Price of Fame and Dazzling Light don't look like a whole lot on their surface, but they're actually insane combat tricks in this deck, where not only are you getting a creature off the battlefield or you're neutering something's power, but you're also making your guys bigger at the same time, which can lead to these ridiculous blowouts. So again, get as much mileage out of your instant speed spells as you possibly can. If you're interested in playing this deck, I've said it a couple of times, but it's $75 in this state. on TCG Player. Under $100, well under $100, not too bad for a deck in a format that includes dual lands. Again, I'll say it one more time. This deck is only $15-20 without the dual lands, which you can do if you want to order it that way. So whichever way you want to play it, give it a shot, because it's a ridiculously fun deck. I'm telling you, once you have a 6/6 Spybug or a 7/7 Phantasm, you're just having the time of your life. So give this thing a try. And you can do just that by clicking the first link in the description and heading over to TCG Player. They help sponsor my content. They're good to you, boy. And they're the cheapest place you're going to get this deck on all of the internet. Don't even overpay for a budget deck. Why would you do that? So click the link in the description. That'll take you over to the deck list on their website. You can view it in one concise place. You don't have to listen to me run my mouth for 20 minutes again. Unless you want to. I would be happy with it. But if you don't want to, like a sane person, click the link in the description, check out the deck, order any pieces that you need. And there's other ways you can help out the channel too while you're at it. You know, it's super low effort. You can click the thumbs up button to like the video. Subscribe if you haven't done it yet. Haven't even scratched the surface of Guilds of Ravnica Standard yet. We've still got a billion more decks to do. Lots of creative stuff that I want to get to in this format. So make sure you subscribe for all that stuff. Hit the bell for the notifications. And check out the Patreon if you haven't done it yet. For $1 right now, you can head over there, and I'll not only let you participate in polls to see what decks you want to see next, but I'll let you know what decks we're doing 24 hours before we do them. Lots of value. Keep me in your thoughts, because there's a huge Category 3 hurricane coming through my neck of the woods here in Middle Georgia in the next 24, 36 hours, something like that. So hopefully we can keep the channel up, power doesn't go out, and the tree doesn't fall on the house. Keep me in your thoughts. We'll try to keep the videos coming as briskly as possible, but in case there is some kind of interruption, be patient with us. It's probably because there's a giant storm coming. But in any case, keep me in your thoughts, and I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.